At first glance, you might be thinking I'm playing Battlefield 3 Operation Metro, but as you squint and start to take in the details, it becomes clear that this is a game that was very much inspired by Battlefield, but is something entirely different. Let's check out this early access game that's made some major upgrades over the years. So this game is called POLYGON. It's one of those indie games that started off as a crazy solo dev project and has grown over the years and been refined to an impressive state. Now, I'm sure it certainly helps that it is a free-to-play game in terms of attracting players, but what attracted me to it was just how much it looked like Battlefield. It is clearly borrowing inspiration from the UI, map design, and even the aesthetics, and so I thought if this developer is that big a fan of Battlefield, what is the gameplay like? Now, POLYGON is not a new game, but it has been getting new updates, and I would say the experience now is significantly better than it was back when it came out in 2020. The team behind it has grown from just one person to a handful of developers to support the project. It's still technically in early access, and it gets a major update about once a year, with supporting updates in between. And the last time I saw it was a couple of years ago, and they just had a handful of guns and maybe 2 or 3 unfinished looking maps. It has come a long way since then. All of the existing maps got improved lighting with clearer distance fog, better color grading, new sunlight directions with improved readability. Some of the new maps they've added, like Sandstorm and Cargo, have absolutely great atmosphere, and even dynamic weather with an actual sandstorm that rolls in to obstruct visibility. Very familiar to anyone who's a fan of, say, Battlefield 3. All of the game's character models and weapon animations have been refined. The character models now seem to have better proportions and are clearly identifiable based on their factions. The weapon handling looks better, but still kind of arcadey. Even smaller stuff like the revamped weapon progression and attachment system has been a huge improvement since they've given each gun a unique progression path that rewards you for actually playing with the gun. Now, the main mode you play is Conquest. It supports 32 players and is basically Conquest from Battlefield. Huge surprise there. There's a handful of objectives on the map that you stand near to capture, and they serve as a spawn point for whichever team holds them. It plays like a smaller scale Battlefield experience. That said, the maps are still fairly large, though small by Battlefield comparisons. And the gunplay seems to be designed around the map sizes pretty well. The base weapons have some pretty challenging recoil, and you really have to master it to get some kills consistently. Now that said, it's without question a more casual approach to, say, the Battlefield experience, and it lacks a lot of the technical stuff like, say, destruction. But the game also seems to very much embrace its limitations and caters the gameplay around them. Even things like the UI and loadout customizations are simplified, but they're also nicely laid out. Now, despite the game being in early access for quite some time, it is still an early access game, and it has some flaws and some issues around it. The UI that I was just praising still has some weird bugs to it, where navigating the menu seems a bit broken at times. Hitting spacebar to respawn doesn't always work, and then you have to click the back button in the menus instead of actually just hitting the escape key like most games would let you do. And interestingly, as much as POLYGON seems to be following in the footsteps of classic Battlefield games, it's also adopting some of the early Battlefield game flaws. For example, spawn camping. On pretty much every map, the team's main headquarters is a restricted area that's obscured with a red border for the other team. The closer you get to the other team's spawn, the more opaque this red border gets, eventually making it incredibly hard to see enemies, but you can still see them well enough to harass them with gunfire. You just can't pass the boundary line, but you can still shoot into it, throw grenades into it, and this becomes a pretty darn big issue because the maps are designed in a way where the spawn locations are clearly visible and easy to attack. If your team takes all of the objectives on the map, the other team will only be able to spawn from their deployment, and it becomes very easy to box them in. Even if somebody escapes from their deployment and tries to backcap a flag, there's no squad spawning system, so it becomes extremely challenging for that single or few players to cap a back point and swing the game back around. Pretty much every match I played ended up with one team spawn camping the other, or with us going back and forth with spawn camping. It made the objectives almost feel secondary to just trying to engage another spawn camp around the enemy HQ. And while there can be some enjoyability with trying to push out of a spawn that's completely encircled or trying to keep people into their spawn, it almost feels like the game would work better with some sort of tug of war game mode, a mode that other Battlefield games have experimented with, but feels like could be nicely appropriate here, since especially those modes play well with smaller map sizes or smaller team sizes. Now, the inspirations from Call of Duty are also in this game, and ironically, one of my main issues with the game is footstep audio. Footstep audio is almost impossible to hear unless it's just dead silent. I was constantly getting surprised by enemies with what felt like no warning system. I'm used to playing games where I can use all my senses to detect where an enemy might be or where they might be attacking from, and if there's any amount of gunfire or action happening, it's just like almost impossible to hear people. Sure, it's realistic, but for a game with this art style and more arcadey approach to the FPS experience, I would expect better footstep audio. Now, interestingly, a lot of really small indie games just go with a flat fee to buy the game and maybe some DLC options to monetize it further. But as a free-to-play, very small indie team, this game is supported by microtransactions. You can buy weapon skins, which I think is probably one of the most gamer-friendly ways to monetize a game. I think games that go exclusively for cosmetic packs and can make that work are sort of the best case scenario for a free-to-play game. However, there is also a battle pass that can speed up your XP gain to help you unlock weapons faster, and I will say the XP grind in this game is a bit of a grind, and the battle pass did look tempting, and I'm not a huge fan of games that incentivize pay to progress. It's better than pay to win, but, you know, not my favorite thing. I tend to be harsher on bigger studios doing this, but as an indie project, I'll give them a pass because I would like them to keep developing the game, and if this is a big portion of their revenue source, then you know, stick with it. I believe they also have a Patreon if you want to further support the project. Now, I was pleasantly surprised by just how much this game has improved over the years. A lot of indie projects like this tend to fizzle out over the years, getting smaller and smaller, less substantial updates, but this one really has turned from a game that was kind of interesting at the start to something that's far more competent, fun to play, looks good. It's just improved massively. So if you're in the market for a Battlefield/Call of Duty clone, I mean, this is an easy recommendation. It is free at the end of the day. I'm curious to see where it goes on its journey to one day hopefully hitting a 1.0 release. Have you guys played Polygon? It has been around for a little while. If so, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop me a like, subscribe for more content, like it, and ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. Up next, check out the original Delta Force Black Hawk Down. It's actually still quite impressive today, and you can see how it's influenced so many shooters over the years. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.